we are here at the Vig Scottsdale. Is that what you call it, the Vig Scottsdale?
McDowell Mountain Ranch.
Okay, cool. And so I've been to this spot several times before, and the patio here is incredible. It's one of the nicest, most beautiful patios. It's surrounded with vegetation, and the interior is beautiful as well. This is one of the coolest architecture, one of the coolest buildings in terms of architecture that I've been to recently for food and beverage. We'll jump into all that, but why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Jeremy Pacheco. I'm the culinary director for Genuine Concepts in the Vig restaurants.
And then we also have our wonderful writer, Marci Symington, with us. How are you doing today, Marci?
I'm great. How are you, Luke?
I'm doing well. I'm excited for this podcast.
I'm too.
Having been to this restaurant before, it's nice to kind of jump in and talk with you and see. I know you're a little bit newer here, correct?
Right, a little bit over a year, about a year and a half now.
And so what is that transition like for you moving into a new restaurant like this, or rather, all of the different restaurants under Genuine Concepts, because you have obviously a pretty storied history of different places you've been. So how has that been so far?
The transition's been great. Obviously, I've got more of a fine dining background. This is actually the first job I've had where I'm not in a resort. I started at the Phoenician in 1998 and been in resorts ever since. So this is a big change for me as far as that's concerned, but I've had a lot of fun with it. We've changed the menu a couple times and working on new changes here now where we're really going to try and raise the bar of what people expected from the Vig, or have come to expect from the Vig. So we're really kind of having a little more higher quality and a little more better entrees and stuff like that, instead of just focused on burgers and wings and nachos and stuff. So.
Well, before we started recording with the podcast, Marci was doing an interview for her upcoming article, Chef Chat with You, that'll be released in January. And just the local places that you mentioned, the high quality ingredients, it was pretty incredible. So we'll dig into that a little bit as well. But before we do, tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Are you an Arizona native?
I'm actually a 9th generation Arizonan.
Oh, wow.
From
incredible.
Tucson. Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about your family's history.
How does one go that far back?
Yeah, seriously.
Actually, my family, we've tracked it, they came through Mexico with the conquistadors.
Wow.
I was going to joke and say that must have been like from the conquistadors, but no,
it actually is. And when I had my first son, I called my grandfather and said, "So, Grandpa, what am I, 7th?" And he said, "No, you're 9th."
Wow.
So, my boys are 10th generation Arizonans now. And I take a lot of pride in it, and it's pretty cool. My family grows cotton in Marana.
Okay.
We were discussing that a little bit. So I've always been kind of part of the farming community, I guess. I didn't realize how much it meant to me until I started working with some of the other local farmers here in town. I was telling her that I was really drawn to Hayden Flour Mills because the rotational crop for the cotton down there is the Durham wheat.
Okay.
Seeing them, I found them at the farmers market, in 2010 as they were just kind of getting going, and we were able to work together, and we worked together pretty closely for a long time. It's been fun. It's my family's still farming. I take the boys down to see Grandpa on the farm and stuff like that too. But I didn't really want to get into the farming. It's pretty brutal work, and not that chefing's any easier. I have a friend that made fun of me. Oh, you wanted the easy way out in farming. You decided to go work as a chef, and much easier.
Well, I was going to say, at least you have air conditioning, but then as you think about it, if you've ever walked into a commercial kitchen before, the last thing it is well-tempered in there. It's not, nice in terms of the heat. They say if you can't handle the heat, get out of the kitchen. They say that for a reason.
Yeah,
right?
it does hold water there. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So growing up on a farm, at what point did you kind of leave the rural, being in that environment?
Well, we moved off the farm when I was in kindergarten. We moved into town a little bit more in Tucson. We still lived out in the middle of the desert.
But still had the farming roots
Still had the farming roots. That was actually my first job was pulling weeds out of the cotton fields. I used to call them hoe hands. It was awful. That's probably what made me not want to do it. So in the middle of summer, cotton's a summer crop. So in the middle of summer, we would have to walk through the fields and pull morning glories out.
Oh, man.
It was a brutal heat and just stomping through the sandy soil out there. Like I said, that's probably what made me not want to continue being a farmer. But getting into cooking, my first, my second job, I guess, was a dishwasher at the Sheraton El Conquistador in Tucson.
Okay.
And really, I just wanted money to buy my own car at that age. So
Okay.
I got that job at 16, and I've been in the industry ever since.
And so, does anyone else in your family have like a culinary background, or was it just a job that you found yourself working?
It was just a job I found myself working. Like I said, I started washing dishes. I tried bussing for a little while and realized I didn't really like being out in front of the house that much. So the chef at the steakhouse there at El Conquistador pulled me back into the kitchen. And I mean, yeah, I didn't even realize I finished high school. I did a little community college there, and I didn't realize there was even culinary school at the time. But one of the other guys I worked with left to go to CIA in New York. And I said, oh, well, really? You can go to school for this stuff? So I did some research and found Scottsdale Culinary Institute. I didn't want to move across the country for it, so I was excited to find something here in Scottsdale, and I started school there in 1998.
And so, once you made the transition up into the Central Valley, did you ever go back down south, or were you kind of planted here from then on?
No, I've really been, besides here in Phoenix and Scottsdale, Las Vegas is the only other place I've been besides that. So I go down to Tucson to see my parents and family, and that's about it.
So when you're in culinary school, having not come from a background that would teach you a lot of these things, were you picking up on it pretty intuitively, or was it kind of a journey, a hurdle that you had to get over?
No, at that point I think I'd cooked at the steakhouse there at the Sheraton for about 3 years at that point. So I started at 16, moved up here. So yeah, it actually came pretty easy. I mean, I hadn't realized how much I had learned. I didn't, being the cook, I was the lead cook at this steakhouse by the time I left there. And I mean, I learned a ton at culinary school, but I didn't realize how much it came pretty easy. But I was able to learn more of the kind of classic sauces and names for all that stuff. Like I remember we learned how to make a roux in culinary school, and I'd been doing that at work before. I just didn't realize there's a name for it, so it came pretty easy, and I was able to refine my skills, and I actually ended up working at the Phoenician while going to culinary school. So I worked full-time at the Phoenician and full-time culinary school as well.
Yeah, Scottsdale Culinary was a 2-year program. Pretty intense, 40 hours
a
week, yeah.
And so you're doing work at the Phoenician while you're doing that. Was that difficult to juggle, or was it driven a lot by passion, or was it, trying to make money to survive?
A little of all of that, really.
Sure.
I mean, I needed to pay rent, needed car payments, that kind of stuff. So there was a need to work. When I started culinary school, they didn't suggest that anyone work while doing it, or at least for the first part. So I did I started part-time, and the chef I was at the Terrace is what it was called at the time, the 3-meal restaurant at the Phoenician. And actually, my friend that had gone to CIA had come back to town and was doing his internship at the Phoenician at the Terrace. And I had got in touch with him. He's like, "This is the only place in town you want to work. There's nowhere else you want to work." And so I started calling the chef and wanted a part-time job while I started culinary school. And he's like, "We don't really hire part-time." But I was so persistently called him that he finally said, "Fine, I'll give you a job." So I started like weekends. Working there, and then realized that I could handle doing more, so it ended up I started working full-time and handling both. And I remember I would get out of culinary school and go home and take a nap for 30 minutes and then head to the Phoenician work my shift. So it was balancing.
Well, and the Phoenician is the kind of place that it seems like people would go to culinary school to have the opportunity to work there, but for you to be able to make that happen before you had graduated culinary school, that seems like a little bit of an interesting position to be in. So were you learning, I figure you're learning a whole different skill set at a place like the Phoenician, and then you go to school and you keep building out more of the fundamentals. Is that what your experience was like? Yeah.
And like I said, I started as a prep cook, and I remember going to culinary school and saying, well, they let me clean thyme and pick parsley today. So it was like baby steps and fine. But then I started working at the pizza station. I started, a little bit more all the time. And really by the time I finished culinary school, I was offered a junior sous chef position at the Phoenician. So
that's huge.
Yeah, it was a big jump. I say I was lucky, but I mean, I guess I proved myself, and I was able to make that jump fairly quickly. So by 21 years old, I was a sous chef at the Phoenician.
Well, and it's amazing what persistence will do for you in any industry, any facet of life, right? And so when you're making these calls and kind of having these goals of yours begin to manifest themselves, is it something that throughout the process, were you aware that this is what you're going to be doing for the rest of your life, or were you still kind of figuring that out?
No, I think I realized that there, and when I first stepped into the Phoenician and went into that dining room at the Terrace, I remember saying, well, once I got the job, I said, I'm going to be the chef of this restaurant. So it was, like you said, goals. I always set myself goals. It was, I'm not leaving the Phoenician until I'm the chef of this restaurant. So within 7 years, I was the chef de cuisine at the Terrace. And yeah, it was always a new goal, basically. So then it was to be an executive chef by 30 was kind of my goal at that point. I made the move to Las Vegas to open the Wynn because the Phoenician kind of ran its course. I mean, there's always more to learn, obviously, but after 7 years there, it was kind of like, what's the next thing? And the Wynn was opening, and it was the next big thing, and nothing was going to be better than the Wynn. So our executive sous chef from the Phoenician had left, and he was going to be one of the pre-opening executive sous chefs for the Wynn, and he pulled a few of us out there, and that was a great opportunity as well.
Who was that? Do you mind if I ask?
David Snyder.
Okay. Because doing the interview and podcast and reading Marci's article on Alex Strada, I see a handful of parallels. Is there something else behind it, or were you guys not necessarily linked at that point?
It was funny. When I started as a prep cook at the Phoenician, Alex was leaving to go to Vegas to go to the Mirage. I remember seeing him. He was a rock star, back then, and well, still kind of is. But I remember seeing him walk through the restaurant when I was, picking parsley, and he left. Obviously, any trips I made to Vegas, I went to Renoir and ate at Renoir. It just so happened that he was going to the Wynn and had his own restaurant there, and we crossed paths there. I opened the steakhouse, SW Steakhouse there. So he had his own restaurant, but I remember being, like I said, we crossed paths through the opening and throughout being open, and so we worked together quite a bit as I spent my time. I ended up spending a total of 7 years at the Wynn as well, 5 years in that first stint. And so I remember just being in his prep kitchen and watching him pull one cook at a time into the walk-in. I'm like, I was there using the...
And they never came out again.
They came out, but they had a much different look on their face. I remember just thinking, I hate to be part of that conversation, whatever's happening in that walk-in right now. So, then when I moved back the second time in 2015, he was coming back as well. So, we did a wine dinner together at Lon's, and it just so happened that he's become part of the Genuine Concepts group as well. So it's exciting
quite an
for us to
interesting
work
culmination of events. So what is it like when you make the transition from Arizona to Vegas? Because it's obviously a very different culture there. Things are different in general. And I figure your work pace kind of changes up a little bit, because it seems like the dining structure at a resort like that would be different than the Phoenician.
Well, yes and no. I mean, at the Phoenician, I was running the 3-meal restaurant, so that was a kitchen ran 24-hour room service, so that pace was always there.
Okay.
So moving to Vegas, the pace was crazy. The steakhouse, once we got up and running, we were doing almost 700 covers a night, and insane to be doing 700 covers in a 4-hour time span. And at the level that we were doing it. And when we opened the Wynn, I don't think we took a day off for like 3 months. So it was 3 months straight of work and then getting things running. And then once we had it running, like I said, it was dinner only, but we were cranking, doing 700 covers. And SW Steakhouse in the second or third year was the highest grossing restaurant in the country.
Wow.
Yep.
And so obviously that's grueling work, right? Day in and day out. It almost sounds like you didn't have any time to breathe. But as you're going through this, are you able to appreciate it and kind of reflect on how, you're completing more and more of your goals as you go along? Or when you're in that zone, is it just being in that zone?
Well, it's a little of both. Like I said, it's kind of setting new goals and moving on from there. I remember, like I said, we went 3 months straight, and I remember I had my sous chef from the Phoenician was one of the ones that made the trek up there as well. And so we would drive into work together. I just remember thinking, like, the Wynn started just looking like this black hole. We'd be driving down Sahara, and like, okay, we're going to the black hole again. But it was grueling, but I wouldn't exchange it for anything. I learned so much. We got to use such amazing products. We were bringing in these Australian lobsters live, and they were like 10-pound lobsters, spiny lobsters, and To be able to do that, we were using Japanese Wagyu beef before anyone else in the country was, or bringing in kilos of caviar, and we would repack it, and the white truffles. Like I'd never use foie gras. Like I'd never use a product like that, and there was a time that we had so much white truffles just kind of hanging out that I was like, oh, I'm gonna make a torchon. I shaved like a whole white truffle into the torchon, and it was just kind of for fun.
Like $1,000 a white truffle right there.
Yeah, it was incredible. We were going through so much of that Japanese Wagyu beef with the trims. Like Sundays, I would make tacos out of.
Oh wow!
It was funny. Now that
that's a great staff meal there.
Yeah, no, we were doing Wagyu tacos and habaneros. So
yeah, that sounds incredible.
Yeah, it was good. It was good.
And so, how large of a team are you working with at this point, and kind of what level of the hierarchy are you in?
So throughout the company, corporate wise, I mean, it's really our owners, Jim Tucker, and founders, and then it's our director of operations, Caesar, and myself, basically.
Well, so I'm talking about when you're in Vegas still.
Oh, in Vegas?
Yeah.
So I guess what was the question then?
So like when you're at the Wynn, what level of chef, I guess, to put it kind of in that way?
I was the chef de cuisine of the steakhouse.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent 3.5 years there. So I had an executive at the Wynn. Every restaurant had its own executive chef.
Mm-hmm.
Then for the entire hotel, there was executive chef and 2 executive sous chefs for the entire hotel.
Mm-hmm.
There was so many different levels of.
Sure.
We had our own bake shop, our own pastry shop, our own butcher shop. So each and our own main kitchen that did all the stocks and sauces for all of these places. So there's all these support kitchens that did so much. So each one of those support kitchens had an executive chef. Each restaurant had its own executive chef. So I was one step below the executive chef of the steakhouse there, and he was probably one of the best chefs I've ever worked with. I learned so much from him. Actually, there's 2 of them. Eric Klein was the opening executive chef, and he spent years with the Spago group and worked with Wolfgang Puck forever, and super talented. Learned so many flavors. Going back to when I went there, I first got the menu, and I didn't know like half the ingredients on the menu. I remember having to go and look stuff up. Like I didn't know what Ludomere was, and he was an Alsatian chef. So we were doing charcuterie garni and all this stuff. I'm like, I don't even know what this is.
I don't know what that stuff is.
I had to look up a bunch of stuff and figure out what we were serving, but I dove into it and figured it out. This
is before the age of cell phones as well, right?
Yeah,
so you can't just pull it up on your phone and look it up real quick?
Google wasn't a thing back then. I was proud of myself because I had an Apple laptop and started doing my research on there, and I had a huge collection of cookbooks that my wife hates me because it's like 10 milk crates worth of cookbooks, and we've moved.
As a young person, I imagine you going to the library and opening up a book and having to blow dust off of it to find out what these things are.
A little bit. So
it wasn't that bad.
Yeah, it seems like it would be. I remember before computers became, a big part of my schooling, you did go to the library, and it felt like that. It felt like blowing the dust off the books. But anyways, to bring it back, so you're in Vegas. How do things kind of bring you back to Arizona once that term comes to an end?
Well, my path there at the Wynn, like I said, I did 3.5 years as a chef de cuisine. The new executive chef, David Walzog, like I said, I learned so much from him. He has great operations. Like we've struggled for a long time until he came in and we got things rolling, and we would do, that huge volume without skipping a beat, basically.
What are the kind of pivots that need to be made, like that took you from kind of having everything be chaos into like a very systemized process, I would assume?
It was just the process of, I hadn't worked at a steakhouse that did volume like that, and neither had Eric Klein, the original chef. So really, David Walzog came from New York, where he was running strip steak, and he ran 5 different restaurants at Michael Jordan Steakhouse at the train center there. So he was really good at that volume, and it was just readjusting the line. We used broilers there, so it was getting 2 broilers instead of 1, and how it was picked up and called, and it was just we put a different system in place, and it really clicked, and we were able to knock things out the park then.
And I bet that allows you guys to execute at an even higher level than you had been previously, because some of the stress is off, some of the backups of pushing things down the line are off. Is that how it was? Was it a big change at that point?
Yeah, it was a big change. It went from, wanting to bang your head against the wall at the end of the night.
Sure.
To, it was still at that volume. You would need your ways to relax afterwards, but it really went from chaos, like you said, to really a good system afterwards. And it was you really can do a higher level, and it's so much pride you have to be able to do 700 covers, and the wheels didn't come off the tracks. So.
And that kind of sounds like, in some ways, like the apex of what like a corporate restaurant or cooking in a commercial fashion can be, right? You're turning out unbelievable amount of plates every single night and doing it at an extremely high quality level, like you said, bringing in just the most incredible ingredients. On a personal level, at that point, are you looking for a change of pace slower, or were you enjoying it?
So I kind of saw that I wasn't going to be moving further forward at the steakhouse, so I looked for more opportunities within the hotel. Like I said, the executive sous chef was a friend of mine. I think he was the executive chef by this time, so he moved me out to be the tournant chef for the entire hotel. So I started traveling between all the restaurants there at the Wynn, and actually Encore was getting ready to open by that time as well. So they were doing tastings for the new chefs at Encore at SW Steakhouse. There's all these chefs coming through and doing their tastings, and I'm watching them. I'm like, I can do better than this. So I threw my name in the hat to get one of my own restaurants at Encore. Did a tasting for the president of the Wynn. I don't know if you're familiar with Elizabeth Blau, but she was a consultant. She's huge in the restaurant industry, one of the leading women in the restaurant industry now. So her and her husband broke off, and they have their own restaurant group now. But she was a consultant to Steve Wynn to bring in all the original chefs for the Wynn, and so they brought her back in to find the chefs for Encore. So I did the tasting for her and the president of the Wynn, and so it was I did 13 courses for them in a matter of an hour.
Wow.
For 8 people. So I did once, and they didn't quite make the decision yet, and they asked me to do another one and scale it down a little bit, because they said I was doing the tasting for the 3-meal restaurant there, and so I did a second tasting.
Just to recap there real quick, you said 8 people, 13 courses in an hour?
Yeah, so I did. It was because it was a 3-meal restaurant, so I did 3 courses for breakfast, 3 courses for dinner, and 4 courses or 3 courses for 3 items for breakfast, 3 items for lunch, and 4 items for dinner.
I was trying to imagine how it could be even more difficult than what you were originally describing, and now to hear that it was all different meals of the day, that sounds like, how do you even execute something like that?
It was challenging. I did have some help from other chefs to put that much food out that quickly. But it was a lot of organizing, a lot of planning, a lot of long days to get it all together.
Sure.
I was doing that as well as keeping up with my sous chef duties at the steakhouse too.
And so a lot of the work, I would assume, is leading up into it more so than the hour you're spending executing
planning
the
and
dishes.
being ready.
Sure.
And you have so many cold dishes, so you can get those ready ahead of time while you're cooking the hot dishes. So it's kind of a matter of planning and being strategic about it.
Yeah.
To pull it off.
And so had you done tastings like this before for people, or is this your first one?
Not really. I had done a tasting to get the job originally for the Wynn, and so I think I did 6 courses at that time, and at that time it was pre-opening of the Wynn, so we were in a trailer. And
wow.
They'd set up a makeshift kitchen in the trailer, and that was for the executive chef of the Wynn, the pre-opening executive chef of the Wynn, and I was doing the tasting at the same time as another chef that was going from one of the other restaurants, and he was a large man, so it was kind of dancing around him in this makeshift kitchen. So I learned a lot from doing that, and then like I said, just doing the planning, and you have to just kind of do what you can pull off and what you're comfortable with. But I did really try to raise the bar of what I was doing. So I challenged myself, but like I said, also made things that I had done in the past.
Sure.
And I knew would be successful doing that. So I ended up, they didn't give me the executive chef position of that restaurant. Like I mentioned, Elizabeth Blau, they ended up, Steve Wynn partnered with her on the restaurant. Her and her husband, Kim Cantinwalla, was the executive chef of the restaurant. They brought me in as their chef de cuisine.
Okay.
And it was kind of, that was a crossroads. Like I could have stayed on the path I was on and basically probably moved into an executive sous chef position at the Wynn eventually. But I wanted to be part of opening that restaurant at Encore from the ground level. When I came onto the Wynn, they'd already hired the people and they'd already designed the kitchens and that kind of stuff. So I was there pre-opening, but I didn't get a chance to do all that, and I wanted to be a part of it from the very, very beginning. So it was pretty cool opening Encore. I was going into the hotel with a hard hat and going to see the kitchen before it was done, going through blueprints, and I hired every single cook. I think we had 30-something cooks there.
What was the name of that restaurant?
Society Cafe at Encore. So it actually, in the first year we opened it, from Esquire magazine, won one of the best new restaurants in the country.
Wow. And so, you had done work in Vegas and done things seemingly at that scale, but this seems like it was kind of a unique opportunity that you took in your life, and kind of a change in dynamic from what you had done before. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And I mean, like I said, I'd ran the 3-meal restaurant at the Phoenician, so I was familiar with that and being able to pull it off. This was, like I said, we were doing a very high-level 3-meal restaurant. What was unique about Society Cafe was, the Wynn is Michelin rated or mobile rated. What is it? Now Forbes took over the mobile rating. I couldn't think of what it was. What was unique about that was Society was the only 3-meal restaurant on the Encore side, so we got shopped by the Forbes inspector twice a month. So our level of quality and service had to be very high all the time, because
no room for mistake.
No, and we would affect the mobile rating for the entire Encore property if we dropped the ball. So it was a really high stress level. We opened at a really high level of food and still doing 3-meal and comfort food and that kind of stuff. So the menu was huge. We finally scaled it back. I remember telling them, maybe we should start a little smaller. This is crazy. So we quickly, we opened and we started scaling stuff back a little bit, and then we got to that comfort zone where we are happy and be able to pull off at a high level. So.
And what is the dining experience like for someone who's not been to a restaurant like that before? What would they expect when they're going in there?
It was still, like I said, that Society Cafe was a 3-meal restaurant, so it was a little more casual, but, the server needed to know everything. That, the table was set perfectly, the water glass, it's, if not familiar with the Forbes inspector, I haven't really dealt with it in a while, but, you had so many minutes for the server to greet the table, so many minutes for you to be seated, so many, how the hostess greeted you. There's a lot of pressure on the front of the house, really.
Yeah.
But what it came down to, too, was that, we had 8 minutes to get the order to the table by the time it was.
That's really fast. Usually isn't it like 15?
Yeah. So, well, I guess the 8 was probably what we set ourselves, so we knew we hit that 15-minute range.
Yeah.
And we were doing, egg white frittatas, took 7 minutes, so it was a matter of.
That seems like it would require some sort of like mind reading capabilities to know what people are going to order before they do.
They started figuring out when the Forbes inspector was coming and who it was, so it was kind of like, okay, pre-make some frittatas, and like we always had one ready in case we were in a jam. We could get one out pretty quickly. So you figure out ways to try and beat the system, or be successful with it. And
so after that part of your journey, what's next?
Well, at that point, and when we had opened Encore, when they brought me on as chef cuisine, I said, I want to get this up and running. I'm going to give you at least a year, but I do want to get back to Arizona. So my wife had followed me out to Vegas at that point, or we weren't even married at the time. We got married that year, and she's from Arizona as well, so we both wanted to get back. So wasn't really looking for a job in Arizona yet, but the Hermosa Inn job opened up. I think my cousin and my brother sent me an article that it opened, and I jumped on the opportunity.
And around what year is this?
So that was 2010.
Okay.
So Michael Risconi was leaving.
That's right, he was there.
Hermosa Inn put an article out that he was leaving, and like I said, my brother and cousin saw that and sent it to me, and I jumped on the opportunity. I talked to them. They flew me out. Did a tasting for them as well, similar to what I did at the Wynn for that job. So I wanted to show that I could do breakfast, lunch, and dinner, because the Hermosa Inn was also obviously 3 meals as well.
But at that point, I bet you could do it blindfolded.
Kind of. Yeah. It was. I was really trying to raise the bar or show them a lot of different techniques and that kind of stuff. So at the time, the Ungers owned Hermosa Inn, and I worked out of it was called the Estate House. I don't know what it's called now. So their canal project. And I spent probably 16 hours straight prepping for that tasting, and then it was the owners and the GM of the property that I did. So it was about 6 people, and I did about 12 courses again. So it was,
Marci, at this time around 2010, had you been to Hermosa Inn before? Because I know you're pretty well versed in Arizona restaurants at that point.
I did. I loved it. In fact, when we were married, my husband and I, one of our wedding gifts was a gift certificate for dinner there. And I
really?
remember thinking that was the best wedding gift ever, because we would have never treated ourselves to something like that. But we loved it. It was definitely one of those special occasion type places. And it has such a wonderful history here too.
yeah, it's pretty iconic.
And so, back at that time period, what was it like there? Was it similar to, I figure it's pretty similar to how it is now, but I know they've done renovations and things like that. How was the experience going to Hermosa Inn back then?
I mean, from a dining perspective, it was fine dining. I mean, you got dressed up, and you just loved to start with a drink in the bar and then get moved into the dining room and hopefully get a spot next to the fireplace. It was just very special. Still is very special. Yeah.
And so, were you familiar? Like, had you dined at Hermosa Inn and been there before that journey began?
I spent the 7 years up here working at the Phoenician. I didn't get out much, I don't think. So I'd heard of it, but I didn't know that much about it. So actually, when I visited there to do the tasting and do those first interviews, it was the first time I'd been there.
And so that sounds like a pretty big personal leap for you, not having visited the place before and, personally vetting it, if you will, to see if it kind of fit with your culture. Was that a big jump, or was it something you kind of knew you wanted to do?
Well, I guess goal-wise, like I said, I wanted to be an executive chef of a property or restaurant by the age of 30, so I was kind of staying in path with that. So obviously I did my research on the Hermosa Inn when I did there, and then, when you get there and I had dinner with the GM of the property on that patio, I said, this is great. Like I obviously really wanted the job at that point.
And I like to describe it as like a desert oasis, because when you get on that property there, not only because there's, beautiful plants and the wonderful patio and whatnot, but the architecture of the building and the way it's kind of, tucked behind a layer of landscaping and other things, if you will, it feels, for me, it almost transports me out of, the valley, if you will, that it has become this modern, city metropolis, if you will. And it almost it really evokes those feelings of a, Cowboys outpost 100+ years ago.
Yep.
And I think that's definitely one of my favorite spots, and it's an incredible place. So once you do the tasting, where do things go from there?
Well, they offered me the job. We moved out probably within 3 weeks. Sold my condo. We bought a condo in Vegas, so it was moved out and came out and went straight to work. There was a lot of changes that I wanted to make when I got in there. So I didn't take a day off for a while. Long days, and I was really trying to prove myself as the executive chef of an iconic restaurant. Like I said, I felt like I had a lot to prove, so it was a lot of long hours. There was a lot of yelling. I remember, you were able to get away with it back then a little bit more than you can now, but going home at the end of the night without much of a voice left, because I'd been pushing the crew so hard that whole time. But I really think in the first month at the Hermosa Inn, I changed every single menu, so it was breakfast, lunch, dinner, room service, and all the banquet menus.
Wow.
And we changed every single menu, and I feel like took a big step forward with what we were doing with what the food was. Michael did a great job, but I was, looking to take some of my experiences from the Wynn in Las Vegas and start bringing them, incorporating them into the menu at LON's.
And this is where, sorry to interrupt, and this is where you started connecting with local farmers and purveyors, correct?
Yeah, so that was where I wanted to start focusing when I had done that tasting for the 3 Mill restaurant at Encore. I wanted to incorporate more of that farm to table. The farm to table movement, or whatever it was really big at that time. So it was something I wanted to focus on when I got back to LON's. So I started researching, going to the farmers market. The Scottsdale Old Town Farmers Market was getting going at that time. That's where I found Crow's Dairy. LON's was the first wholesale restaurant that Crow's Dairy provided to, because I found him at the farmer's market and asked if he'd provide for us, and he did. And I've been working with Wendell Crow ever since. Actually took my boys out to the farm a couple times and let them run around with the goats and stuff. So Wendell's a great friend of mine and great partner of ours.
And so as you kind of achieve this level, you hit this goal, right? Is it just check the box and write a new goal down and start getting that? Or do you have a moment where you're like, oh man, I'm really doing the things I set out to do so many years ago?
No, I think I'd kind of achieved my goal of having that position. But like I said, I had to prove myself.
Sure.
So that's what I worked towards. And it was, we drove hard. We did a lot of stuff. We started a charcuterie program there. So started to do, kind of push the bar of how much we could do, and continuing to grow and get better and learn. And so it wasn't just, I made it to executive chef. It's okay. Now what? And we continued pushing ourselves to get better all the time.
And so was there a point that you felt like you had proved yourself, maybe just a glowing recommendation from someone you looked up to, or maybe a good review of the restaurant stood out?
I guess, Howard Seftel was the food writer for the Arizona Republic at the time. And we got a good review from him. So that is a big point in my career. At least not getting bashed. the only thing bad he had to say was that we served grapefruit sorbet and some older people couldn't have grapefruit. Okay, if that's the best you got to bag us on, then I think we did a pretty good job. So that was big. And I mean, other than that, no, I mean, nothing else that I remember as far as that goes. It was, again, just continuing to strive to get better. And at that point, when you're an executive chef of a hotel on a property like that, you're looking at revenues and that kind of stuff. So now, you focus on food costs and labor costs while still trying to do this high quality product and bring in, more money to the bottom line. So.
And so at this point, I'm sure you had several reviews that reflect on you, as you rose through the ranks. What is your relationship like with food critics? Are you looking forward to seeing these reviews, or is it kind of just like oh God, here's another one?
The Howard Seftel one was, that's one you kind of lose sleep over. I don't think we don't really have a restaurant reviewer critic like that in town anymore. I know Arizona Republic just brought on a new one, but I think that was the time where Howard Seftel would still wear a disguise and you didn't know when he was coming and that kind of stuff. So that that was kind of the epitome of that restaurant critic. Now, I'm not afraid of it. I look forward to it. And now, I'm looking forward to having people in. And usually now you kind of know about it more before they come in. Now it's not this big secret.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I've heard this from several people that said that really those restaurant critics really made or break restaurants in Phoenix back then.
No, and they couldn't. That was knowing it came out, I was going to Circle K at 6 a.m. to go get the paper to see what it was. So it was
prepared if it didn't go well to start pulling them off the shelves everywhere and getting them out of town.
Yeah, exactly.
And so where does your journey at Hermosa Inn go from there? As you're kind of getting settled in and getting these positive reviews, what comes next?
So like I said, we continued to grow and work with the local purveyors and that kind of stuff. We dabbled in that a little bit. I spent 3.5 years there. We had our first son, and then we had another one on the way. And, the big hotels in Vegas, they have such great benefits. I was kind of like, well, maybe we should go back to some of those benefits that we had while we were there. The executive chef had reached out to me to see if I'd be interested in coming back, and I was like, nope, I'm good. I don't want to go back to Vegas. And then I remember being up in the middle of the night thinking about my second son coming, and I said, okay. I woke up the next morning, and I said, I think we kind of said to my wife, I think we should think about going back to Vegas. She said, it's up to you. Do whatever you think is best. So he made a opportunity for me to go back to the Wynn, and it was a opportunity for growth. But before that, he wanted me to go back to Society Cafe and be the executive chef of it. So at that point, like I said, Elizabeth Blau and her husband were partners with Steve Wynn for that 3.5, 4 years. They didn't renew the partnership, so they wanted someone in there to run it from the hotel side more that was fully the hotel side. So they brought me in because I'd had the experience running it and opening it already. So I went back there, and again, kind of threw myself back into it and making menu changes and getting that place operating the way it needed to again. That, you know, after the partners had left society, you know, that some of the quality levels had started to drop, and I had to bring them back and streamline things and get things running well again. Like I said, I was hoping for growth at the Wynn. I spent 2 years there. I remember telling the executive chef when I took that job, I said, okay, I'll go do that first, but don't let me get stuck there because I've already ran that restaurant and I don't want to do it again. You know, that was, like I said, 3-meal, high stress, 1,500 covers a day restaurant. And at that point, they'd built the big pool there, and so that you'd get all the drunk people from the pool parties coming in after that and that kind of stuff. And ended up, I'd been there 2 years, and I said to the chef, I said, don't let me get stuck here. And he's like, well, how long you been there? I said, 2 years. He's like, oh. And so I could see that the opportunities that I was hoping for at the Wynn weren't going to come to fruition. At that point, the owners of the Hermosa Inn, actually the Ungers sold the Hermosa Inn, and the new owners had been there when I was there and loved it so much, and they weren't happy after I was gone.
Is it the Allreds still?
The Allreds are the owners now. And they came after me. They flew out. Mike Allred, the owner's son, came out to Vegas with the GM of the property and took me out to dinner, and they made it worth me coming back. So after 2 years in Vegas, I went back to the Hermosa Inn.
And so how does that feel when, you know, you left and somebody reaches out to you and says, you know, we want you back? How does that feel as a chef?
Oh, it's huge. I mean, to know that how much I was appreciated for when I was there. You know, sometimes you don't, you know, see that and get that, and especially from your owners and sometimes. So for me to leave and them not be happy with things after I'd left, it's a big compliment.
Yeah, because it's not just, you know, someone coming in and dining and having a bad meal and saying, oh, I wish it was like the old days. It's the people that need you essentially coming to you saying, you know, we want you back. So that must be a pretty big testament to your ability to kind of do what you did at the Hermosa Inn. So when you go back, is it another kind of redo of everything there, or is it just starting to tighten things up?
It was tighten things up again. Not a whole lot had changed that much. But I really had to go in and find a whole new crew. So I had to hire 3 chefs and 10 cooks and, you know, get things back running. Maybe not that many cooks, but just getting things back operating the way they should be. And, you know, at that point, you mentioned the renovations. We'd started renovations. Allreds have put a lot of money into it. That was the first round of it going on then. So I was being a little bit part of that. And the planning that went along with that, and you know, I got a great chef cuisine in, and we did a lot of fun stuff. We started bringing in whole pigs. We were doing 1 whole pig a week.
Wow!
We were bringing in these Mangalitsa pigs from a local farm out in Glendale, and you know, we were making prosciutto, we were making salami. We had a tasting menu that was pork 5 different ways. You know, we were making head cheese. There's pig parts everywhere. Finally, my chef said, my chef was like, okay, I think we need to calm down on this. Like, it was so hard to keep up. We seriously had pig parts everywhere. So we did that, but it was a lot of fun. And it's kind of one of those things that make a splash when we came back. And, you know, we continued working. You know, I mentioned we started working with Rovey Dairy. I think the local food and products and farmers that really began to flourish more when I'd come back. So I'd, you know, again, started working with Hayden Flour Mills and Bob McClendon and some of the other smaller farmers. And, you know, we did a big focus on keeping up with the local products. I would say we were almost 70% local produce.
Wow.
In season. You know, in summer, maybe not so much. But in season, we were getting enough from the local farmers. I would say we're close to 70%.
That seems unusual for a resort. Would I be wrong in saying that?
Yeah, but I mean, because Hermosa Inn was only 43 rooms. Well, there are 43 rooms now after the renovation, so it was a small amount of rooms. So we were able to handle it there. You know, and we did have a lot of, you know, the 4 private dining spaces where we did banquets and stuff like that. And, you know, some of those menus wouldn't be as focused on local, but we were really with the LON's main menus, we were really able to focus on that as much as we could.
And so do you enjoy, or at this point, did you enjoy the pace of like a Hermosa Inn more than your stints in Vegas?
Oh, for sure. I mean, Vegas was pretty grueling, even when you know, the expectations of that hotel were so high. And I was kind of like, that was when I realized when I went back that I'm like, I don't think I want to be a part of this.
Yeah.
You know, I would see the food and beverage directors there. They would never go home. You're always on your phone. You're always, you know, when you're off, you're fearing what's going to happen if you're not there and that kind of stuff. And obviously, we always strive for high quality levels, and we did so at the Hermosa Inn, but I didn't have to have the stress of.
Yeah, you're looking at quality of life for you and your family at this point, too.
Yeah, and I mean, it was still, Hermosa, we were still doing 60-hour weeks. You know, it was still a lot of hours to keep that place running,
Sure.
but it wasn't the intense stress that I felt in Vegas.
And so around what time was it that you came back to Hermosa Inn?
So it would have been 2015.
Okay. And so I figure, you know, going back and forth from Vegas, you kind of saw the Arizona culinary scene begin to develop more and more. But when you came back that last time, was there a big jump, or was it kind of the culmination of something you'd seen building?
I think it was a culmination of things I'd seen building. I mean, really, when I went back to Vegas after being part of the Hermosa Inn for 3.5 years and being part of the Phoenix food scene, there's a great community of chefs here. There's great people, it's a community, and I didn't get that in Vegas, you know, and I had a hotel filled with amazing chefs, and there still wasn't this community, you know.
Sure.
There's a whole, the whole strip's filled with amazing chefs, and it's not the community like what we have here in Phoenix, and that's what really I missed and what I wanted to get back to.
And so when you say, when you speak to that community, what was one of the differences? When you move back to Arizona, are you getting dinner with other chefs and kind of diving into it? I know you mentioned bringing your kids to Crow's Dairy.
Yeah, I mean, it's doing that, I was close with the farmers and that kind of stuff, and, friends.
Which you can't do in Vegas. You can't go hang out with farmers for a couple hours.
There's not anywhere, not any farms outside of
I was
Vegas.
going to say, they must import most.
Yeah. But yeah, of course, I'm friends with Lee Hilson and McMillan and these guys and all these events, the local food events that we do. The Scottsdale Culinary Festival. I mean, my favorite event was the Best of the Fest that we used to do at the, I don't know if you guys ever went.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And it's so cool. We did it at the Hyatt Gainey Ranch out on the lawn, and to do a 5-course wine paired dinner on this lawn. Everything's cooked out on the lawn, and I mean that's where you get to work with the other chefs around you, and we weren't doing that kind of stuff in Vegas when I went there, and to be able to come back and do those community events and work with the other chefs in the Valley, it was so much fun. I really missed it.
And so at what point do you kind of move on from Hermosa Inn?
Really it was a matter of COVID. Hermosa Inn shut down. They had to let me go because they were unsure of the future. I was very, very fortunate that Genuine Concepts had reached out to me the day before. So I joined the Genuine Concepts team at first as consulting to do some menu changes. They had shut down all their restaurants as well. They tried to do, with the shutdown, they tried to do takeout, and they just weren't set up for it right. So they just shut everything down, regrouped. They reached out to me. I met with Jim and Tucker, the founder and the owners, and went from there, and we got started right away. What really intrigued me about them was, they shut down because they weren't set up, but they wanted to come out of the shutdown in a better place than they were. And that means a lot, that they're going to invest in what they're doing. They were looking, I traveled to every property they had, and, we were looking where we could make renovations and where, that kind of stuff. So it really meant a lot to me to see that they wanted to invest in getting better, and taking a terrible situation to come out in a better place than they were.
Looking for opportunities,
So that's really what intrigued me with them. Then actually, like I said, to go, I went to all the different locations and see how diverse they are really too. Like you said, how beautiful this property is with its Frank Lloyd right design, and then our uptown locations and a bank from 1960s. Our Fillmore location is a 1914 carriage house downtown. The original Arcadia location, it has its kind of dark and steel and brick, and they're all so different, but it's kind of cool to just see how diverse every neighborhood is that we're in.
And so when you join with Genuine Concepts, you're going from overseeing one kitchen to many different kitchens. What is that journey like for you to kind of make that transition?
Well, it's just getting to know the team and making sure that I have a great team in place. Each one of our restaurants has its own head chef or chef de cuisine and sous chef. So we started working on changing the menus right away, and we were able to bring the whole team in to start working on the menus together. And it was kind of cool. One of the chef at our McCormick Ranch location, Roberto, he was one of the chefs at the Phoenician when I worked with him. So he was a guy that I worked 20 years ago, and I knew and loved, and was excited to have him part of the team when I came on. And it really made it easy for me to have someone I knew too. So yeah, it was just bringing the whole group of chefs in together and start working on the menus together. The first menu change we did as we came out of the shutdown was kind of just to streamline and set ourselves up for doing takeout better. I really felt like the menu was all over the place. So that's what I mean by streamline, was kind of getting it to make a little more sense. And, they had so much product on some of the dishes. I just remember saying, how do you even have room for all this product? For one, it was one dish. They had a cod dish or something on that had like 10 different ingredients in it.
Wow.
That weren't on us. So it was kind of diving into the menus and looking at them. At this point in my career, I can kind of look at a menu and see where the flaws are. That's where we clean stuff up and streamline and get things reopened and running and operating smoothly and through challenging times. As we went from kitchen to kitchen too, that's what I learned a lot from, that David Walzog I mentioned, that great operating chef that I worked with at the Wynn. I was able to go into every kitchen and kind of recognize too that I didn't feel like the kitchens were set up in a way that was successful either.
Like the actual layout of the kitchen. Okay.
So where the cooking equipment was set up on the line, it just didn't feel right to me, a lot of them. So those chefs that were on, even at this location, at our downtown Fillmore location, I said to the guys, I said, now's our opportunity. If you guys have worked through this, what your struggles are. Now's your opportunity. We can move equipment around right now because we're not open. So let's take this opportunity. I told one of the guys, I said, go get a 6-pack, sit in the empty kitchen and stare at the line until you figure out how you want to set it up. And he said, okay, I'll do it. So we ended up moving equipment around here at McDowell Mountain, and it's really helped our streamlining and being able to get
those kind of logistics are really important. A lot of people don't think about that.
Did that at Fillmore, and it made a huge impact, where they struggled, kind of like I said, where we struggled at the steakhouse when we opened because things just weren't set up right, where they had some of their struggles. We were able to fix some of those. And we just recently made changes at McCormick Ranch and invested money in equipment to make it better.
So not to get too deep into the weeds of that, but what is one of the adjustments that you look back on that, the average person who maybe gets annoyed that their sink is a little bit too far away from their stove, what is it like in a commercial kitchen that you would adjust?
Really is how the food's coming up and where the food's coming up from. And that's what I kind of recognize is that, I'm used to, I like to have the pantry and the appetizers, so the pantry and the fryer kind of stations together. So it seemed like most of the kitchens, they were separate. So we were able to bring that together, so all the appetizers are kind of coming from one place, going up to the one place in the window. So that was one of the big changes we made. And then the other one, like at McCormick Ranch, just being able to, see where the food's coming from. So I'm able to get all the hot food from one section.
Just making a logical flow of food through the kitchen to make sure it's coming out in an efficient manner. Sure. So what are some of the other restaurants? Obviously, the Vig is one of them. Campo is another one. Talk about the other restaurants outside of the Vig that you kind of oversaw and what that journey was like.
Well, so Ladera, our Mexican concept, it's been open for, I think we're going on 4 years now. And I looked at the menu and I said, oh, this is great. I honestly, I haven't even touched that menu. we've got a chef there. His name's Victor, and he's been there for several years now, and they do a fantastic job. It's authentic scratch Mexican food, and like I said, I really haven't had to mess with it except for a few tweaks here and there.
And whereabouts is that?
So it's on Central and Dunlap, between Northern and Dunlap.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm there for support with him, and to help with costs and that kind of things. But as far as the menu goes and the food, they do such a great job. It's nice that I really didn't have to touch that menu too much.
Well, I figure at Campo with Alex, that's not too much work for you to do as well.
Yeah, it's kind of the same. Our owners invested in Strata, his first concept in that location, and it wasn't part of Genuine Concepts at the time. Unfortunately, it wasn't successful, so they looked to make a change there. And we decided to go with Italian, and so I ended up we brought Genuine Concepts in to be part of that, to help manage it, to help get it flipped over and make it a successful restaurant. So Alex and I we wrote the menu together. We did the tastings together for the owners on what we were doing, and it was a great collaboration. And our philosophy there was just doing simple Italian food with great ingredients, and maybe kind of my philosophy has been for a long time, and I know that that's what Alex's was. I mean, I remember what I appreciated about Alex's food. So I ate it. Like I said, I went to Renoir. I ate at Alex twice when I was in Vegas, and it was 3 ingredients on a plate, but they're done perfectly. And doesn't need to be this mishmash of products. It needs to be a few products that go together perfectly, that are prepared perfectly, that are of high quality.
And that's the essence of Italian cooking too.
Yeah, really. Yeah. So it's simple pasta dishes, but we're getting our pasta from Sonoran Pasta, and we love it. And we're not able to do our own fresh pasta there so much, but we're able to get the best fresh pasta I feel in the city. So
we just had brunch there, and it was wonderful.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, we had a great time.
No, it was really looking forward to seeing our brunch grow there. It's been a little bit of a slow start, but we started brunch in the middle of the summer. So looking now that it's cooled off, I think we're really gonna see it.
Yeah, on that beautiful patio.
Yep.
Yeah. And they have a mimosa and Bloody Mary cart, so y'all need to get out and try it.
Yeah. That was one of the things I actually stole from society. I said, we should do this Bloody Mary cart, and it was so obviously so popular in Vegas, but it'll be a fun little thing once we get it going.
So what else, is there anything else you'd like to share about these different places, exciting things that you guys have going on over all the different concepts that you have that people maybe don't know about or that you want to share?
Well, we're getting ready to change the menu at all the Vigs. We have changed the menu here at our McDowell Mountain location. Like I said, we changed the menu a couple times already. The first menu was, like I said, kind of streamlined to get us through the first summer of pandemic. We made another change later in the fall that was a few more of the dishes that I wanted to have on there. And now we're really taking another step forward with our food quality and expectations. I don't want to be known as a neighborhood bar. I want to be known as, great food, shareable, where people want to come and share several items. I mean, that's how I like to eat, I guess, is kind of where we're starting to take the menu. Is I like to go to dinner with friends and order 10 different items and share everything. So trying to get items on the menu that are going to be similar to that, so we have a whole section that's focused on vegetables. We're doing a whole head of roasted cauliflower. We're doing a side of roasted carrots. Kind of some of those fun dishes, and bringing more steaks and a little more seafood onto the menu as well. Here at the McDowell Mountain location, we have the local Rovi Dairy Wagyu beef. So we've been using the ground beef since I came on for all our burgers, the local Wagyu. But we're able to put the New York strip loin on the menu now. So we're serving that here. We've partnered with Argentine Imports, which is another provider that's really kind of stormed the Arizona scene here lately. But we're doing a grass-fed Argentine ribeye as well. We're doing Chilean sea bass from them. Locally, and we're using the Wild Shrimp Company, the Rocky Point Shrimp. That's a locally owned couple that do that, and the shrimp's so good. And I mean, we put a grilled shrimp appetizer on the Campo menu when we did it, and it's really simple. I mean, it's grilled shrimp with citrus and fennel, but the shrimp's so good you don't have to do anything to it. So that's kind of what we did here. Was we have a grilled shrimp. It's basically like a hot shrimp cocktail. So we have a roasted tomato horseradish sauce we make from scratch, and then just marinated grilled shrimp. Real simple, charred lemon. But like I said, the flavor of the shrimp's so good you don't have to do much to it. So we're really focused on and excited to bring the level of the expectations at the VIG.
Yeah, well, if Wagyu burgers and Chilean sea bass don't get you excited for dinner, I don't know what will, because that's making me very hungry right now.
Right, and we still, if you want chicken wings, we got them. If you want nachos, we got them. But don't want to be focused on that. We want to move forward.
Yeah.
Does Little Woody have a menu?
Little Woody has a menu.
I've only been there for drinks, so you'll have to excuse me.
No,
you have to go there, by the way.
Yeah,
You'd
definitely.
Love it. Yeah.
It's a very small kitchen, so it's all electric, so we don't have a hood there, so we kind of have to focus on. But people love what they do. They make their own little pretzel knots. We have these stuffed peppers that people love. We're doing great flatbreads, great charcuterie plates. Just tried to do a menu that's complimentary to cocktails. It's simple and, again, shareable, that kind of stuff. We're getting ready to reopen the Womack, which we haven't opened since the original shutdown. We're doing a little bit of renovation there. We've added a great big, expanded the patio and added a big glass door that kind of brings it inside out. So we're working on a new menu there. And if you're not familiar with the Womack, it's kind of like 40s, 50s cocktail lounge feel to it. So we tried to, maybe 60, I don't know, tried to kind of bring some of that in. So it's going to be a classic shrimp cocktail, and again, using the Wild Shrimp Company shrimp. We don't have to do much to it, but meatballs, we're probably going to do some focaccias there, and like a chicken liver pate and stuff like that.
My stomach's growling.
Yeah, seriously.
So yeah, we're excited. It looks like the Womack will open within a couple weeks, and there's some projects down the road that I can't talk about yet, but I'm getting real excited about those as well.
Fantastic. Well, it's been a pleasure sitting down with you and kind of hearing how everything has come full circle for you, now getting to work with people that you did so many years ago, but a little bit more along a pace that works for you personally at this point, and it seems like things are thriving for you guys. I'm excited to see the new evolution of the menu. Christina was here recently, and she was posting some pictures, and I was very jealous of her because it seemed like you pampered her nicely.
Yeah, no, Christina's been a huge supporter of mine since she really started doing the food writing. When I was a chef at Hermosa, that first stint, I was the first chef she did a story on, and when she was writing for that small wine magazine. So, we've worked together for a long time. She's been a great supporter of us, and always happy to have her out.
Yeah, shout out to Christina, Sonoran Pasta, Crow's Dairy.
Rovey Dairy.
Yep, McClendon, all of those people. Shout out to you for supporting so much local and doing such a high level of cooking and bringing that to Arizona. And you as well, Marci. Thanks for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you guys both, and see you next time on the podcast.